All right, welcome everyone to episode 5 of the Pathmakers podcast. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by none other than Luke Boase, the founder of Lucky Saint. Thanks for coming.
Luca.
And I'll thank Luke because I've filmed 4 other podcasts so far, and you're the first person that brought beer. So thank you.
On a beer podcast.
No, we were drinking some of the new Vice beer that was launched. When exactly?
So launched in very beginning of October.
Brilliant.
So yeah, it's been a fun. I actually just love this beer. It has a bit of a special place because it was Vice beer is sort of intrinsically linked to one of the very early decisions on Lucky Saint lager, which was to have an unfiltered lager versus filtered, and the inspiration from that came from trying all the non-alc Vice beers from Germany and just finding these amazing cloudy, hazy beers that have like huge amounts of body and character to them. Yeah. And that was in the development of the lager. That was the big challenge. Is like how do we get more into this?
Okay.
So it feels 7 years on. It feels
full
nice.
Circle moment.
It feels nice to be going back. And yeah, it's a style of beer that works so well in non-alc.
It's very good. Yeah. So and we were chatting a little bit before this, but I did spend a bit of time working in Germany and had a very similar experience with non-alcoholic beer, where you had some pretty subpar options in a lot of countries, and then you go to Germany and they seem to have figured out a few things at least. So yeah, I didn't know that was part of the inspiration, but very cool.
Certainly, that was also just going back to kind of how I ended up in Germany was, I guess there are 2 things that they're really good at. They're, I think for me anyway, like the home of lager brewing, and then as you say, they've been brewing and consuming non-alcoholic beer for decades, and so there's way more expertise over there. So you put those 2 things together, and having tried in the UK and having tried in Belgium, actually, there's probably a reason that I ended up with like making the real progress in Germany.
Okay. There is a really cool story around, because Lucky Saint was actually founded, I think, officially in 2018.
Yeah.
But for you, it was probably 2015. Is that fair?
I think my brain started clicking into gear in 2015, and then like in earnest 2016 started trying to build relationships in beer and in drinks, and figure out what's in beer, how do you brew it, how do you brew non-alcoholic beer, all of this stuff.
Yeah. There's a quite a cool narrative on the journey you went on to start from idea to making a product that you thought could actually solve the problem or the opportunity you saw. We will come on to that. But speaking of beer and what you're drinking and stuff, like I know we caught up at the Lucky Saint I guess a few months ago now, but you were or maybe still are, but you were like a good beer fan, right? Like you drank what kind of stuff? What was your like beer lifestyle like in 2015 in that time period?
It's probably worth going back even a few years, because I think in the mid noughties and latter part of the noughties, I fell out of love with beer.
Okay.
And I stopped drinking it for the most part. And I didn't know why at the time. I can now see. Then along came, I guess in the early teens, and craft beer came around, and suddenly it then became clear why I'd stopped drinking beer. It was because there was just a lack of anything interesting.
Okay.
I'd grown out of I'd said some of the macro brands that existed, right?
I think I know a few of them. Yeah.
And craft beer was just a route straight back into beer, and I did the classic thing of like going on wild journeys of discovery and spending my time in Clapton Craft and feeling the need to have tried everything. So it was like. And then you kind of end up doing this full journey, which is you go on an entire journey of discovery around a category and all the wonderful different beer styles, and then you tend to sort of end up back on a small handful of things that are generally not the weirdest or the wildest, but they are probably more classic styles done like executed really, really well.
Okay. What is, if you can explain a little bit, like your journey where you came into beer?
It's probably worth going back a little bit. So I was, I got obsessed first about starting my own business,
Right.
and I was in a job where I just didn't feel like I had any control over my own destiny, and I got quite frustrated by that.
Okay.
And then I met two founders of a technology business and sat in a meeting with them, and they were literally overflowing with excitement about the business that they were going to build, how it was going to change the world, and their level of excitement and passion and belief was it was really infectious. And I thought, I want to be sitting on that side of the table with them. I want that feeling.
Okay.
And so for me, it was first about starting my own thing and starting my own business.
Okay.
And a few ideas came and went, but the one I could never shake off, and actually the real reason I couldn't shake it off was not because there was a great sort of strategic opportunity, or it was more of an emotional thing, which is, here's this like wonderful proposition, alcohol-free beer, that A, I'm not drinking, and B, other people feel like they need to apologize for drinking. And I wonder if it would be possible to brew an amazing beer that will bring people into the category, but also would it be possible to build a brand that would make people feel positive about that choice? And, take it from this sort of a category with loads of negative connotations and turn it into something positive. And so that was the sort of emotional kind of bit that got hold of me.
And it's interesting because that is, if you look at today, we're talking like 2015, 2016, but if you look at today, that's something that you started to see across a lot of maybe tired categories, right? Like, you could have done that with canned water. You could have done, or water. You could have done it with toothpaste. You could have done it.
But beer's the best category in the world, right? Look at the advertising.
So beer fan
this is the other
meets
thing.
beer opportunity. It was like that, right? But why didn't you start a craft brewery, for instance?
Everyone was starting craft breweries.
Okay. There's a very good story around the developments of the product that I had never heard, right? Because you essentially go, here's this challenge I want to take on. But there isn't really a solution to that challenge. Like there's no like product where you're like this, okay, well I just have to make this and then we're good. Like you didn't know if it was possible or viable. Like you had to go figure out whether the brand is one thing, but like, can I make a product that is going to make people interested in this category? Can you tell a little bit about that journey?
As I sat in 2016 and looked at what was going on, there wasn't a beer that was good enough to bring me into the category, and then there wasn't a brand that made me or anyone feel positive about the choice to drink it. Okay. Part two on the brand is a moot point unless you've got an amazing quality product. So that was job one, and I spent 2 years working my way around different breweries, 6 in total. Started in the UK, went to Belgium, ended up in Germany, and lots of failure in there, but a boatload of learning. Yeah, I remember. I managed to sort of research my way to what I thought was an really interesting brewery for me to approach, but by this stage I've approached so many.
How many are we talking here? Like,
who knows? But you're sending cold emails to, info at or equivalent local language email, and it's painful. Like no one ever responds. No one's interested, and kind of I know why.
Yeah, no,
because
you get that, yeah.
you know they probably get loads of requests and they're all dead ends.
Yeah.
But I managed to get the CEO's email of this brewery, and I crafted quite a good email. It was kind of, it wasn't too long, but it just had enough. And then I said, oh, by the way, I'm in Germany on Friday, so can I pop by? And amazingly, he came back in literally within like 2 minutes. I got an email back, gave me a bit of a fright because he was like, yeah, sure, come by at 1. And I was like, shit, I've got to get out there.
And that's the one that worked, or?
So that's the one when that was the beginning, and we still brew there today.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
And I only found out a couple of years ago. I went over and sort of job one was to convince the CEO, and I kind of after a while I told the story and enough different angles on the story of why this was interesting, and things like penetration of the category is really low in the UK, but it's much higher in Germany and other parts of Europe. So there's a big category opportunity in the UK, and Beck's Blue and Bavaria were basically the only two they were the only two beers with meaningful shares. They basically kind of split the category between themselves in this country.
Yeah.
And so that was that's probably what tonic water looked like in 2005 when Fever Tree launched. So I was, I did a bit of that stuff, and eventually he was like, okay, yeah, let's go and meet the brewmaster. So we sort of walked across the yard, and met the brewmaster, and we talked about what this beer should, what is this, how this beer should be, and how, what steps in development, and how they could try and help, and then I got back in my hire car, a little sort of Vauxhall Corsa, and I'm there thinking, I've been here for like 2 hours. I think this has gone really well, and I'm there like waving out the window, and there's the three of them are like lined up there, and then they're all like waving back to me. And I only found out 2 years ago that basically behind his hand, the brewmaster was saying to the CEO, he's like, total waste of time, I'm not doing that.
Really?
And the CEO was like, I don't know, I think maybe we should just give this a bit of oxygen. And so anyway, so that's a source of ribbing between the two of them.
That's you painted a very good picture. I can totally picture that scene.
But I always think that these are maybe this is just what life is like. But these are the margins are so narrow on this stuff, right? It's the sort of if that. Yeah, if that had been actually maybe you're right, or if the brewmaster was like actually just like no.
Yeah, or one person didn't sleep as much and was in a bad mood. Or
Do you know? And it's yeah. Like, but that's life, isn't it? You can't spend too much time. That's
pretty wild. But I think what is really the case is you spent the better part of 2.5 years trying to find that solution to what you said, where there was the two problems, the brand and the product, but you needed the product, and that's a bold move, right? You could have, you said, okay, I asked the question, why didn't you start a craft brewery? I'm not saying you would have, but that was an option. You could have done that if that was of interest to you, but you chose a path that ultimately there wasn't a solution for, and might take 2.5 years, not before you have any success, but literally before you have a product, because you have to find that solution. I find that super interesting. Although I know for you it probably just feels part of the journey, but and there's a great quality narrative there as well, and the whole story, the reason why to go to Germany, which makes a lot of sense when you put it that way, because Germany at the time was I don't know how much was the percentage of beer was non-alc.
So back then it was 6%.
Okay.
And the UK was at less than 0.5%.
Okay.
So yeah, big difference.
Big difference. So then, yeah, okay, you're ready to start this thing called Lucky Saint, which, but you didn't just start it. You went pretty bold, and there was I can't remember if I read this or whether I heard it in something, but there was a quote where you said something along the lines of, your belief was that you wanted to do something and you wanted to find out whether it was going to be a success or a failure fast. So you didn't want to have to wait 10, 15 years for that to be the case. You wanted it to be like, let's go do this. Is this going to work or not? Especially because you were going after something that was, new, right? So you went like fairly bold out of the gates. And what I mean by that is by two things that I've seen. So one is advisors and investors, and in some cases those two are intertwined. But you had some really good advisors right from the very start that you surrounded yourself with, and you went bolder with investments to kind of go in and make this happen. Can you explain a little bit about what that looked like?
I got obsessed by if you sort of go back, I got obsessed by startups and building a business. And at I was in my mid-30s, and if I'm going to commit my time, I didn't. One of my fears was committing a big chunk of time to and getting 10 years down the line and not knowing if you're ever going to get there, and knowing if the proposition is going to be successful or the brand can make it, or all those sorts of things. And it's not necessary. It's not like a monetary thing, but I want to know that I can kind of achieve the vision for the business. And one of the ways is, one of the accelerants is funding.
Yeah.
Because you can test and learn much quicker when you've got more money, so you can parallel path things. So in year one, we ran an outsourced sales model and we built a team internally and we ran them in parallel. And ultimately we brought it all in-house because that was a much more effective way of, we were winning much more and better quality distribution that way.
Okay.
And it came, I suppose that lots of it was around team. Those early, it's all about distribution particularly in the early stages. It's like, can you win in good accounts? And on trade in particular is really intensive around people and
relationships.
So that was one of the things. But yeah, there was just a driver there which said, like, I'm happy. I'm not happy, but I'm comfortable if this doesn't work. But I'd rather find out in 3 years, not 10 years.
Okay.
It's probably that's probably the best way of like framing it.
Okay. And so what did that look like? So what if you say that now and you think back to the start of that journey, what are the things you mentioned? A few there, like there was some investment, there was this testing specifically on the on-trade stuff. Like what other elements, or are there other elements that kind of fit that decision?
So we raised some money just before we launched. Actually, going back one, it was from a branding perspective. We actually rebranded before we even launched.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, there was a previous iteration not called Lucky Saint.
It's called Not Another. What was it called?
Not Another Beer Co.
Not Another Beer Co. Yeah.
Which I guess became clear we could improve on that.
Yeah, the story, because I mean that's in the CMO Uncertain CMO podcast. It goes into it, obviously marketing podcast, so you get into brand quite a lot. But it is you received a piece of advice or feedback from someone. The way you I can't remember what the phrase was, like, don't talk about what you're not, or what was it?
Yeah, because it was called Not Another Beer Co. And the best way of describing it is the opening slide on the in our the sort of brand introduction was in font size 72, or massive basically. It just said, not Beck's Blue, not a range extension, not apologizing, not just another beer.
Okay.
So it was I mean, it was quite challenger brand.
Yeah.
You know, it was slam your fist on the table, and and quite a kind of powerful and noisy way to launch a brand. But it got some amazing advice from Ben Bilbul, who now sits on our board and has been really instrumental from a brand perspective in lots of ways. I'd sent the deck to him, and he'd picked up the phone, and his opening question was, "How far down the naming and branding route are you?" I was like, yeah. Spent 6 months on it, ready to hit print. And he said, "Look, what you've built something that's sort of very powerful, but you've built it in opposition to a category, and it can be a really powerful way to sort of like land message, you know, and because it's quite kind of classic challenger brand style." He said, and the bit that really got me is, he said, the challenge you might come up against in the medium term is that you run out of ways to tell people how you're different, because you're defining yourself in opposition to a category, because your name starts with not.
Yeah.
And he said, "Look, there's no one in, this is a brand new category, there's no one in it. Why don't you go after the propositional side rather than the oppositional side?"
Yeah.
And then you can celebrate everything that you are. And
For a long time.
And it's just, your creative runway is much longer.
Because it's a little bit like the Brewdog problem, isn't it? Right? I mean, Brewdog became, I mean, this is not necessarily true, but if you look specifically at percentages, became the category of craft beer, because it was over 50% of the off-trade craft beer was Brewdog. When are you not punk anymore, right? Is that kind of a similar thing, or?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I do, I look at craft beer, and it's been built as a category to a large extent. It's been built really firmly in opposition to mainstream beer, and it's like head to head. And I didn't want to build a brand or a category in opposition to something.
Okay.
I'd much rather work collaboratively within an industry and a category, rather than kind of in opposition to it.
Right.
Less confrontational.
Yeah. Hence Lucky Saint.
And so hence Lucky Saint.
Okay.
And how do we get onto that? Oh, I suppose but actually going for it in terms of brand creation, and never having a sort of thought that, oh, well, it just needs to be good enough for now. So we set out, you know, with an objective, which was, well, this needs to stand up. This doesn't just need to be the best alcohol-free beer brand. This needs to be a top-level drinks brand, regardless of category, and the execution of it needs to be at that level from the get-go. So like, brand was one thing. We raised a bit of money before we launched. I had a plan. Everyone needs a plan, right?
Yeah.
The money was going to last us for 2 years.
Okay.
And we were going to slowly build to a team of 3.
Okay.
Over a 2-year period. So in month 2, we were already 3 people. And just because I hired someone just before we launched, and we had 33 listings on our first day. When we launched on the 1st of October, in our first month, we won 80 new listings. In our second month, we won 90 new listings. In our third month, we won 100 new listings. It was just like, well,
just kept going.
Just keep going, and let's do more of what we're doing. And so,
and that's the story for 7 years, isn't it?
So plan in the bin.
Yeah.
Going to need some more money.
Yeah.
And we should we should hire more people.
Right.
So it started from that point. So it was all I mean, it's so fun at that stage, just because the immediacy of things that you do is like, it's just instantaneous, and it's like instant gratification on things, because when you go from one listing to two listings, you've just doubled the size of your business.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And your goal is like, if we can just get to 10, and then
and then we've 10x'd. 10 for 100, and you've 10x'd again. Like, you know, it's just, and the more effort you put in at that stage, it's just, I distinctly remember sitting there going, God, the more emails I send today, the more responses I'll get tomorrow, and the more listings we'll get the day after that. If I wait till tomorrow, then the responses won't come till a day later. So it was just, that's the immediacy of like
Crazy.
those early stages, which is so fun.
That's interesting, because you like, there was this boldness from the start, and there was, because I don't think that's something you see very often. However, what it kind of sounds like is, because the success started quite quickly, what might have seemed bold before starting, and a plan that seemed right before starting, probably within a couple of months, maybe didn't seem all that bold anymore, because the success almost became bolder than the plan. Is that?
Yeah, maybe it didn't. The decisions at that stage, they didn't feel. They didn't feel that bold, in a sense. I mean, you look back and they sort of were quite bold, but it felt like all of the indicators were all there that said, yes, there's. I mean, like in like tech speak, it's like product market fit thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you go out into a customer, like and actually not all of them said, oh yeah, there's a problem, and this solves it for us. Lots of people aren't identifying that they need an alcohol-free beer on their menu. But those that do would be like, yes, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a solution for this problem? And then you show them the beer and the brand, and they're like, yes, this is exactly what we need. So that gives you the confidence to make those decisions.
One of the things that, bold or unique or whatever the right term is, but one of the things that is definitely the case is that from the outset you had one brand, right? You built a business, you and team obviously built a business that had one brand, and had one brand for probably the first 5 years, right? That's a very difficult thing to do. And there's not a very, very many examples. I was trying to think about it on the way in today. I'm just thinking, like, what are other examples of, especially over the last 10 years or so? And there's not that many.
Red Bull.
Yeah, that's even a bit before that.
It has.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously it's diversified a bit, but I think that's like.
Yeah, and like I was just wondering, was that decision, like, was that firm from the start? Like, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be a one brand thing, and yeah.
Do one thing well.
Okay. Well, no, focus. I mean, focus is, I believe, the most underrated asset any individual has in life, right? And the cheapest as well. But it's hard, right? Like, building something like that is very hard. Building a hero brand, not even just, it could be one brand business, or it could be a hero brand within a set of brands, is very hard. Focus becomes a harder thing, especially as you grow. And there's a lot of pressures against it too, right? Like, the sales team might say, if we just had something else, we could get this much more revenue, right? Or it could be customers saying, like, a bunch of people come in asking for a Weiss beer, for instance. Can you do, like, there's a lot of pressures against that. How did you stick to it for so long?
Just by saying on repeat, 80% of the world's beer consumption is lager.
Okay.
If there's going to be a defining brand in this category, it's going to be with a lager. Anything, and there's a but coming, because obviously we've done innovation, but this was the mantra that we absolutely live by, and the mantra I still totally believe in. But as you get bigger, it becomes easier to let them go. But the defining brand has to be a lager, and anything that we do risks diluting that. So we want consumers to recognise us, and we want to be famous for producing the best alcohol-free lager, and that will help us achieve being the defining brand.
Yeah.
After 5 years, we got to a point where we thought, we can now, the core brand is big enough that we can do something else without it being dilutive, and actually it can be additive. And then what innovation has done for us really well is just given us more visibility. So if we think about in fridges, in bars, on supermarket shelves, we can double the amount of space that we have when we go from one product to two products. Yeah. So it's become a really powerful thing, and then and actually there's loads of incrementality when you because not everyone drinks a lager. Some people prefer IPA, some people prefer lemon, some people prefer a Weiss beer.
Yeah.
I did in the latter part of where obviously I knew what was coming, so I began to sort of, do one thing well, but never say never.
Then I'm going to continue with this idea of boldness or doing things differently, and that's the on-trade, which you touched on earlier. But that was impossible to find a non-alcoholic beer on a tap, for instance, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm confident in saying that. I've been to a lot of bars in my work, and I do remember, I think it was one of the first, it was right when, when did you launch it on draft? It wasn't right away, 2018, no.
January 2020.
I was going to say, it was in London at the time, and yeah, I do remember having one shortly after the launch. Good timing to launch in the on-trade, I guess.
Yeah, this is.
Yeah,
it was fun. Like it was, the roller coaster was real.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So we look, and actually, so all the way through 2019, people were saying to me like, you should definitely like this. You should do this. You should have this on draft. And it makes total sense, right? If you want to normalize a proposition for consumers, the consumer should be able to drink their beer regardless of ABV in the format that everyone else is drinking it in. So you don't want to, if everyone else is having a pint,
yeah.
If you're not drinking, you shouldn't have to stand there with a different format. But the question mark was always around rate of sale and warranting the place on the bar, and getting that tap, which is it's a different kettle of fish, winning taps to winning spaces in fridges. And this it was going round and round, and it was sort of resisting it, and then like lots of things, suddenly it was, we thought, oh, hang on a minute, if there's one time we should test this, it should be January.
Yeah.
And for two reasons. One, obviously heightened consumer interest in the category, but also the nature of on-trade and hospitality in that month is that they've got more flexibility because footfall is lower, so they're more open to trying different things.
Okay.
So those two things work really well. So we decided literally in like the end of October that we should do it, and so we scrambled,
Made it happen.
Got everything ready. We won 70 draft accounts in that, which was wild for us.
Yeah.
We thought we'd bought 3 months worth of stock. It was gone in 3 weeks, and we were panicking on how do we?
You can't run dry during dry January. Right? But the on-trade you mentioned there, like normalizing, I think that's like really interesting because you it's a good point that, if you're enjoying non-alcohol beer only through grocery, for instance, then it's not really part of the full occasion. Is that so? That was one of the reasons for that to go into it.
So it started with I guess a very traditional lens on drinks brands are built in the on-trade.
Okay.
And actually, I remember going on to, so I was due to go and meet Shalen, who's now our chairman. He founded and was running Distill Ventures,
right,
which is Diageo's kind of incubator innovation. I don't know exactly what you'd call it. I should know exactly what you'd call it. Anyway, that does its thing, and they were never going to invest in us. They don't invest in beer, but Chilen, he gave me a short meeting, and I remember him asking me. He's like, "So, what's your plan for the off trade?" And I'd read on their website, so I felt quite well briefed that drinks brands are built in the on trade. And so I said, "Look, no plans for the off trade." There's an embargo on even thinking about it. We're just going to be really focused in what we do. And he said, "I challenge you to rethink that." I was thinking,
is this a trick?
Exactly. Is this a trick? And he said, "Well, the thing is that it's easier to convince someone to drink an alcohol-free beer at home on a Monday than it is in a bar on a Friday. So people are forming their non-alc drinking habits at home." And so the direction of travel is the opposite to normal. So people are then taking their non-alc drinking habits into the on-trade, rather than the traditional model is that you do all of your discovery and you find your new things in the on-trade, and then you buy them in the off-trade and drink them at home.
Interesting.
But we started with on-trade, and that's always been like that's always been a consistent and core bit of the business. So even with that insight accelerate, it meant that we sparked up a conversation with Sainsbury's the next day, and started with 80 stores in Sainsbury's in that first year of trading.
Okay.
And sort of and have slowly built it up. But so we've always there, and then we launched D2C. So ever since year one, we've been an omni-channel business.
I do want to shift gears a little bit. So there's a lot there about the decisions, but I wanted to go into a few opinions of yours on the industry. So my first question is, so you walk into a pub 10 years from now, right? What does that look like, and what role is non-alcoholic beer playing in that occasion?
I've often talked about this idea that we're coming. I think we're coming out of a status quo, which is everyone is drinking unless you say you're not drinking. So you arrive at an event, you have to actively choose to not drink, because the status quo, and because we've as a society, we've been building social connections around alcohol for thousands and thousands of years, and it's always the norm is that you're drinking. And I think the switch is happening quite quickly, which is, rather than choosing the moments that we don't drink, we're increasingly choosing the moments that we do drink.
Okay. And
if all the consumers have changed, are shifting that mindset, then when you go into a pub, it's not about what the ABV of a drink is. It's about, what I'd like to be able to drink a great quality lager, and I want it you're obviously not going to be able to literally select the ABV, but it could be it could be at alcohol-free level, it could be at mid-strength, or it could be at full strength. So you could have that's my.
Makes sense.
I'm excited to see that.
Cool. What about in the off trade? So in the off trade, I'll say this way, maybe we can talk around it, but obviously there's this discussion with things, something like non-alcoholic beer, like where should it sit really, or where will it sit in relation to something like beer or fruit juices and water?
So off trade is almost is a kind of more interesting canvas in a sense, because there's this blurring of the lines that's going on between categories, and alcohol-free beer sits right on the fringe of stuff, because in one sense it's categorized as a soft drink in some perspectives, but then because it's a beer, the occasionality is kind of rooted within beer. But we're seeing this blurring of the lines around. Okay, but you can drink a Lucky Saint with your lunch, where you wouldn't drink a full strength beer.
Yeah,
and particularly we've launched lemon, and that has a totally different audience and occasion profile to our lager.
Okay.
And so, yes, it will still exist in traditional beer aisles, but I think the opportunity is that it'll exist in a much broader number of places in stores. So we're in the lunchtime meal deal in big retailers, which is just the beginning of trying to stretch out alcohol-free beer, that it can exist in a much wider kind of selection of places within store, because it's being consumed on different occasions.
Cool. Last thing for you, and then I'll we can close it off. A little bit of a rapid fire round.
Okay.
Ready for this? Not sure.
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. So what I would say, so rapid fire is if you could try and answer these with one word or one sentence.
Okay, I'm going to concentrate.
The first one is, name an alcoholic brewery that excites you today.
I might answer it in a different way. I'm really interested in what comes next in full strength beer. And I don't know if it's just my pure desire, but can cask have a proper comeback?
Okay.
Guinness has obviously had this sort of amazing period of growth and particularly in terms of audience, and there's lots of things I think that cask actually shares with Guinness in terms of authenticity of product, and the search for the perfect pint, and it's got a wonderful serve because it's hand pulled, and so there's something in that for me that I get. And I hope it's more than just my desire, a sort of romantic desire to see it remain on the bar and actually go into growth. And
name a brand outside of beer that has inspired you.
One of the brands I just remember so clearly listening to their story, there's a guy called Blake Mykovsky who founded Tom's Shoes.
Okay. Yeah.
And he did an interview on How I Built This, which is that American founders podcast series. Really fantastic interviews. He's an amazing storyteller. And listening to him tell his story, not just about Tom's actually, but just about his whole entrepreneurial journey, 'cause he's had a number of businesses, I was obsessed by that podcast series in general, and his journey. I listened to that podcast 5 times.
Okay, you gotta check it out. Never heard it. Yeah, cool. One of the questions is last beer you drank, but we're doing it here together. What about before this one?
What was the last beer I drank? The last beer I drank would have been. We serve in our pub. We serve a Bavarian Helles.
Okay.
That we drive kegs out to Germany and we fill them up with literally the best quality Helles. and we serve that in the pub.
Oh, amazing. I don't remember seeing that when I was there last time. I got to go back and check it out.
Yeah, it's felt like it's yeah, it's a fantastic. That's my other it's a fantastic beer.
Amazing. We had a few examples of this in the podcast, but best piece of advice you were ever given, if it wasn't one of those that we already discussed.
The most liberating piece of advice I was ever given was by one of the Innocent founders, Rich, and I was asking him for some advice for him on building marketing teams and figuring out what my role was and how this, where should I lean in and where should I sort of let the team get on with it. And he said, as a founder, you should only do the things that only you can do.
Right.
And it was the most liberating piece of advice, because it's permission not just to do the things where you add the most value, but also to actively not do the things where you don't.
Okay.
And actually, I think for founders, it's the most. It works at every stage of the journey. So in the very early stages, you should actively try and shed the things, the roles and jobs that you're doing where someone else could be doing it.
Yeah.
But it goes all that. It's as relevant for me today as it was on day one.
I guess it helps with the focus thing as well, right? Keeping super focused.
Yeah. And I think I think all founders, particularly at early stages, you end up doing lots of things that need to be done, but don't necessarily move the dial.
Yeah. Yeah. No, fully. And you also have a good team. I know a few of them from my days at Camden. So
we've got a fantastic team.
That always helps when you can get when you've got a team that can take it on and do it as well as they can. Last question. One sentence to inspire others looking to blaze their own path.
Always focus on quality.
I like it. Good.
Yeah, I just think it's the thing that sits it's the thing that sits at the middle of our brand, actually. And then I read, actually fun enough, I got sent this morning a copy of an old article written by Jim Koch.
That's from Boston.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's entitled CEO as a Salesman.
Yeah.
And he talks about the absolute fear of going in to make his first sales pitch with unlabeled bottles of Sam Adams lager and all of the just being totally terrified by it, and then getting a yes, and the bar managers ordered 25 cases of beer off that, and he went from like total fear to total elation. And just that was all down to everything for him sits around the quality of the beer. He has to be confident as someone going and selling this beer that he's not trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. Yeah. He's genuinely trying to give them something of better quality than they can get anywhere else, and that makes your life so much easier.
Interesting. Have you read his book? He wrote a book. It's quite
I have done.
I read it a long time ago, but I do remember some good nuggets in there as well.
Yeah, I definitely did the audio version.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and great to hear this story. And again, it's one where, as I said, there's a lot of research out there, but I don't think you often hear the true story, all the kind of inner workings of that start period, and what drove the passion. So thank you again for coming and sharing that with us.
No, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Luca.
No problem. And yeah, that's episode 5 in the books. The final episode will follow on in a couple of weeks, and that will be with Paul Jones, who's the founder of Cloudwater Brewery up in Manchester. So everyone stay tuned for that. Thanks for tuning in, listening, or watching. See you soon.